Welcome, everyone, to episode 15 of another Jags podcast, the number one off-season podcast of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when the season starts, it will be the number one in-season podcast for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are diehard fans of the team. We love the Jaguars. We love talking about them, and so that's what we do here on this show. With us, as always, we have Joey. Joey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing, guys? Everybody doing all right?
You're doing well. Jason?
I'm doing great.
Good. You're excited about this position group we're talking about tonight?
So excited. This is my favorite, probably my favorite group.
Didn't you say that about
every position?
Every position? Yeah. Okay, yeah, just making sure. Robert, how we doing?
Doing real good.
Good. Knee holding up okay?
Yep.
All right, good.
James, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good because my mom and sister tonight were at my niece's dance recital, and Tom Coughlin was sitting behind them, and my mom said that she was going to talk to him about our podcast. So,
and he said he loved it, right?
He said he's a huge fan. Yeah, he's been using a Twitter burner account to ask us questions.
I knew it.
He said, "Oh, you mean the number one off-season Jags podcast?"
That was his exact response, and she began to explain a little bit about who I was, and so I'm feeling good.
And then he asked for your autograph.
That's coming.
Okay,
That's coming.
all right.
He's going to get us some press passes, and we're going to start really covering the Jags the way we want to. But no, I'm doing good. I'm excited about tonight as well. We're going to be talking about the running back position. As you hopefully already know, this offseason we're taking every episode and dissecting a specific position group. Last week we talked about the linebackers. We've talked about tight ends. Well, tonight we're talking about running backs. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about mandatory minicamp. But before we get to that, we want to let everyone know that we are on social media. We're on Twitter at Another Jags Pod, and we are on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. And if you have any questions, any concerns, any subject matter you would like for us to cover, reach out to us on one of those platforms, and we'll be happy to talk about that on our next episode. Remember, this is a fan-based podcast. We are fans, so are you, so we want to include you in the discussion. So let us know what you would like for us to talk about, and we appreciate, again, everyone that is listening, that's spreading the word about the show. We love doing it, and we're happy to include everyone in it. But like I said, before we get started with running backs, let's talk tonight about mandatory minicamp. It's a 3-day minicamp. It started today. There was some news that came out of day one. I think for most of us, the biggest news was that everyone was there. So the news really is that there is no news, which is good news. In minicamp and most offseason, the best news is that there's no news, that everyone's doing what they're supposed to do and that everyone's healthy. And so far, knock on wood, that's been the case. Today, everyone showed up. Jalen was there. Leonard Fournette was there. All the guys accounted for. That's good news, right?
That's great news. And I think in addition to that, not only do they all show up, but they all showed up like ready. They're not using camp to get ready. I mean, in the past, you've had like Maurice Jones-Drew showed up to a couple camps like way overweight. You've had Malik Jackson recently.
Easy, that's Jason's favorite player.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean,
I like trying to get him out of the pride.
I like him as well, and but
no fatsos in the pride.
Dedication to the preseason was off a couple years, but I mean, this year you've got guys showing up in playing shape in the mini camps. I mean, I think Fournette was down to 223. Is that what they said?
Yep.
Which is almost 10 pounds, and saying he looked ripped, and everybody was there, and nobody got hurt once again. So, yeah, that's exciting all around right there.
I just think it's awesome we don't have to worry about these divas not showing up, like David Johnson not showing up for a new contract, Le'Veon Bell not showing up for a new contract. Like that, I'm glad we're not having to worry about that, and we can just go into minicamp and just follow our horses.
Do you think David Johnson has a leg to stand on with that? I mean, he was out all year last year. He had a great year the year before that, but doesn't seem a little bit, I don't know, like he doesn't.
I would say with all of these holdouts, they're probably being advised by their agent to do it. So for whatever reason, maybe simply he just wants to see if he can get more money, because running backs have a short lifespan. We all know that. So you got to maximize your profits while you can. But usually when players do this type of thing, they're not acting individually. They're getting advised by somebody.
Right. Worst case scenario, they don't have to go to mandatory minicamp.
Right. Is anyone really going to care when the season starts if you were there or not?
No. It's an all-season story. And that, again, is why I love the fact that all the Jags were there. My goodness, people were talking about Ramsey not being at the voluntary OTAs last week and the week before. He's there today, and he's ready to roll.
I mean, the holdouts like that with like a David Johnson type player, that kind of throws up a red flag to me of, is a team chemistry not there that you don't want to be there and you don't want to support the guys around you? Because, I mean, I don't think he's going to get a lot of extra money. Somebody is probably talking in his ear, but it's almost like it isn't fitting together, and he's doing that because he feel like he can and he doesn't want to be there.
Right.
Which none of our guys are like that. All of our guys want to be there. They all want to get ready. They all want to win, which is awesome.
I think, too, what you were saying about Fournette and all these guys that are showing up that maybe weren't at voluntary OTAs that are here now. They're in shape. They're ready to go. All signs point towards this is not a flash in the pan, one-hit wonder team from last year that a lot of people are expecting from the Jags. There's no sign of that whatsoever, that they're going to let up at all. Like, they got a taste of the conference championship, and that was enough for them. That I think, if anything, that just whet their appetite even to be even better, which I love. I love that.
I mean, that, and you have like people like Jalen Ramsey and Telvin Smith, these guys that are coming from like teams that they're not used to losing, and then coming into the Jaguars and not having good first couple seasons. Now, I mean, they're tasting that, and that's what they want to do. I mean, they're looking to go back and now win those championships with the NFL.
Well, Jalen Ramsey was talking about today in his press conference he had, or whatever you want to call it, that the team had a group chat with multiple players, and they were texting back and forth, and most of the text consisted of them keeping each other accountable, asking them if you're running, are you staying in shape, and things like that. So it's cool to see that these guys are, interacting outside of the office, really, and making sure to hold each other accountable.
Yeah, and if that's happening without the coaches involved, that's incredible. I mean, that's going to breed success, I think. Joe, you had mentioned you had heard some good things about Rashad Green, of all people. If anyone doesn't remember, Rashad Green is a wide receiver that, yes, is still on the Jaguars, even though did he even play at all last year? He's on IR from the preseason?
No, and I mean, the whole time he's been there, I think he's averaged like 5 yards a catch, and he had a decent season as a punt returner. But I mean, he's Florida State guy, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you guys. I mean, he came out like highly recruited. It seemed like had a lot of potential, and he's just never fulfilled it. But now, I mean, there's multiple reports from guys who actually do have access to practice that are saying that he looks phenomenal. Like, he is the flash player at the moment without pads. He looks like the best, which is crazy.
When the Jaguars drafted him out of FSU, I think it was in the 5th round. Am I wrong? I don't know.
I think you're right.
Okay. It was a later round pick for sure. I was ecstatic because at FSU, he was the go-to guy. When they needed a big play, that is who they went to. I mean, when they won the national championship against Auburn, everyone remembers Kelvin Benjamin catching the game-winning touchdown, but it was a Rashad Green pass that set that up. I want to say 80-yard play, but it was a huge play. So when the Jags drafted him, I thought, this is a steal. And it never really translated. He had an injury with his hand at the beginning of his career, and then missed all of last year. And to be honest with you, I forgot he was even on the team. And then, like you said, Joey, the reports have been coming out that it's almost like what those of us that saw him play in college, what we expected of him then is actually happening now. And what a wrinkle that is.
Yeah, I remember him having really good hands in college, and it could have been the injury, but it just didn't seem to translate once he came to the Jaguars. I mean, he showed a couple flashes, but then all of a sudden, if I remember right, he just started like muffing punts and stuff like that. Then he just kind of disappeared, and then he got injured last season. And I mean, so I don't really care if he comes out and he does good, awesome. But I would have personally cut him last year because I mean, I didn't see much from him the first couple of years he's on the team.
Well, they put him on the IR with an Achilles injury before the 53-man roster was due, so they were able to keep him on the IR all year. Okay. So cutting him wouldn't really give them any benefit.
It didn't affect us at all then?
Yeah. Now, when you're on the IR like that, do you get to practice at all? Are you part of the practice squad? Or can you have nothing to do with any team like outings at all?
No, I don't think you can.
Okay.
Because it's also called the PUP, physically unable to play list. So I would think in order to be eligible for that, you would be unable to play.
That makes sense. I was just curious again if like they saw something at him at the end of last year in practice that we don't get to see, and that kind of translated to, hey, we know this guy is ready to be here,
and there probably was
make that leap next year. I mean, it just kind of seems like it fit in with what they did draft wise and letting go of top wide receivers, that sort of thing.
Then he's probably super cheap. I'm assuming he's on the rookie contract still, so we're probably not paying anything for him.
Probably not. So we'll see. I mean, it's exciting.
It is. I mean, listen, the more people that show out, and that's a great problem to have when you have a lot of talent you have to pick from, especially wide receiver, which we're not talking about tonight, so we don't want to get too far into it. But, yeah, so far, I mean, all off season, no news is the good news. Blake seems sharp, seems like a leader, seems like he has a grasp on the offense. Fournette came in leaner, faster. I read somewhere that the weight that he is now is the weight that he was at LSU when he was the most productive. So that's and he was about 10 pounds more last year because of his ankle injury, so he gained some weight. So he lost that weight in the offseason. Can we go ahead and segue into running backs now? I mean, Do we have any more we want to talk about? Okay, good, because while we're talking about Fournette, I'm just going to go ahead and lay my best card down here as we talk about running backs. And I'm going to go ahead and say I think Leonard Fournette is going to vie for the rushing title this year.
You know, it's funny you say that because as soon as I knew this was the topic this week, the very first thing that popped in my head was 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns.
That's a productive year.
Yeah.
And let's, before we go any further, because we do want to set the stage a little bit with Jason, but we'll just to give you the numbers on Fournette and give you a little context. Last year he had 1,040 yards rushing on 268 attempts with 9 touchdowns. So that's a great first year, especially considering he missed 3 games or 4? 3 games. So I'm going to go ahead and say that. It sounds like Joey is somewhat echoing that sentiment.
Absolutely.
Okay. But let's kind of turn it over to Jason real quick, as we do with every position group, and just kind of let him set the stage for the depth, the players there, and all that stuff.
So I just wanted to quickly overview what the Jaguars' running scheme is and the 5 players that are currently on the roster fighting for the probably 4 spots that are going to make the team. Really, the running game comes down to your offensive scheme, what your offensive line does, and I'm not going to pretend to act like I know that stuff as an expert, because I don't. What I do know is that the Jaguars run a power running scheme, which basically means that they try to open up gaps and they have an assigned player to block, basically pre-snap. So usually the running backs that fit best into that scheme are bigger backs, or what are called like one-cut backs, who run laterally, see a hole, and just hit the hole as hard as they can. Those backs tend to do better, which is why we've seen Marrone and Coughlin talk about how they like the bigger backs better than the smaller backs. So Fournette fits perfectly into that scheme. But basically what you need to know is that the offensive line doesn't have to think a lot, and they're really just trying to create a gap, and it's up to the running back to utilize that gap. There's not a lot of, like we use the term vision for backs a lot. A vision would be much more important for a running back in a zone scheme where offensive linemen are running to a spot versus creating a gap. So it's basically, if you're running power, the easiest way to think about it, in a power run scheme, you're trying to go downhill at a defense. In a zone scheme, a lot of times you're trying to get to the edge. So that would be the easiest way to think about it. So our 5 running backs currently on the team, obviously we talked about Leonard Fournette, who we said, who he had a 76.2 PFF rating last year. TJ Yeldon, who we're assuming will be his backup, out of Alabama, 6'1", 223, is his 4th year, had a 63 PFF grade running, which is pretty bad, but he had a 79 PFF grade receiving. We'll get more to that when we talk about TJ Yeldon. The 3rd back on the list, Corey Grant, who sees a majority of his snaps on special teams, is 5'11", 203 pounds, so not really the ideal size for someone in a power run scheme, but doesn't mean it can't work. He's in his 4th year with the team. Then the 2 guys that are kind of fighting for that last spot are Brandon Wilds. He's out of South Carolina. He's 6', 220. He was undrafted last year. Falcons picked him up, and then the Jaguars signed him to the practice squad week 6 of last year. And the last back who's fighting for that final spot, Tim Cook, a rookie out of Oregon State, 6 foot, 242 pounds, so a bigger guy, closer to that Fournette size. And he was also undrafted. He's a JUCO transfer, and he's got a lot of hype in OTA so far just because of his size.
That's a crazy one too, the Tim Cook, because I was reading up on him because I had no clue who he was, and that dude, his freshman year in college, got shot. It was a robbery. One of his friends got robbed, and he kind of stepped in or whatever, got shot. So it wasn't a bad.
Hey, this is a backstory.
I'm sorry.
It's not. He didn't just get shot. It was like Tupac. Like 5 shots didn't drop. Yeah. I took it and smiled.
Man.
It was 13 shots, dude, and one of them hit him.
Oh, he got shot at 13 times.
Yes. It was like a hail of gunfire.
So a stormtrooper was firing at him.
To his credit, from what it sounds like, it wasn't like anything like he was doing wrong. It was a fluke incident. But then he got cut from 2 community colleges, and then all of a sudden he finally saw himself in a decent team, got a pectoral tear, and then he finally made it over to Oregon State. So it's like, gosh, that guy's had a run of it. I mean, and the fact that he's even on an NFL team right now, even if he gets cut, is like insane.
It is pretty amazing. And the pectoral tear, like, you talk about size, like 6 foot, like 242. How he tore his pec was he was trying to be the strongest guy in the weight room and benching 410 pounds. It popped, dropped on his chest, and I mean, come on. 410 pounds as a running back?
I've been there.
That's crazy.
Whether he fully makes a team or not, I mean, he's the most interesting one to me just off of that.
I have to agree. It's pretty impressive.
let's kind of work top to bottom here and go back to Fournette, and we'll kind of work our way down the depth chart. I've already said, obviously, what I think, and that Fournette will be top 3 rusher in the NFL. Joey seems to agree. Jason, what do you think? What are you expecting out of him this year?
I just think it's interesting to look at the attempts he had. He did have 268 rushing attempts, which is pretty high. I mean, there was only 5 running backs with more attempts than Fournette. Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, Le'Veon Bell, Jordan Howard, and Todd Gurley were the only guys with more attempts running the ball than Fournette was. That's one thing. He only played in 13 games. Remember, he missed one injury, he missed 2 because of injury, and he missed 1 because of suspension. Interesting to see how he does when he holds up. I think he'll have a better year, but it'll be interesting to see how they use him. He also had 36 receptions for 302 yards. So that's pretty good. He had a touchdown. But what's interesting is, as I thought we should have used Fournette more as a passer during the season, he had a huge drop against the Patriots on the first drive of the game. It was 3rd and 4. They lined him out wide. I was loving it. They ran him on a slant route. I was loving it. Blake hit him right in the hands and he dropped it. And I was like, oh man, that's probably why they don't do it. But an interesting stat is he had 302 yards and 1 touchdown in the regular season. And then he had 242 yards receiving in the playoffs in just 3 games.
Really?
Wow. Again, in the camps, as of the past couple of days, they keep talking about how soft his hands are. Not only does he cut weight, but his hands still look even better as far as catching ability. So I really think that's a good point. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of that extra gain from him next year. It's going to be interesting.
And, it's not just that he's going to suddenly be a better running back, because I think out of college, he was a great running back in his last year, in his rookie year. But look at what they've done. They improved the offensive line. Blake is going to be better. So the offense as a whole is going to be better. And I think he's going to feed off that, because they're still a run-first team. And I don't mean that every first down they're going to run the ball, but that their priority is to run the ball first.
I mean, they ran the ball more times than any other team in the league.
Right. And so I think because everyone has gotten better, that is going to, in turn, make him better as well. And so those first down runs where he gets 1 or 2 yards might be now second down where he gets 4 or 5 yards, and those little differences add up throughout the course of a season. And I just see him making a big jump. And this is not a player that on the offensive side I'm going to say is going to make the biggest leap, because I don't think he's really in that category.
And it's going to be James O'Shaughnessy.
Yes, it's going to be James O'Shaughnessy, yes. Right, according to Jason.
Yes.
But Jason, I want to put you on the spot really quick, because you said something a couple episodes ago when we were talking about tight ends that I thought was pretty interesting. You had said that when we were talking about tight ends needing to block, how the coaches for the Jaguars offensive scheme wants there to be 8 defensive players in the box. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because that has a lot to do. Everyone always says with Leonard Fournette, well, he faced 8 guys in the box. Well, you're saying that's what they wanted him to do.
Right. So if we do a standard hat for a hat, meaning man on man, just looking at how a defense is going to play an offense with 5 offensive linemen, a quarterback, and a running back, you're already at 7. So if you're a hat on a hat, you got 7 guys in the box. So, and that's normal. That's not doing anything toward a tendency or anything like that. That's just playing football.
So even if you run a 4-3, that's the same?
You bring a 4-3, you're going to have your 4 down linemen and your 3 linebackers in the box.
So that's still considered in the box. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
The box is considered 5 to 7 yards within the line of scrimmage.
Okay, cool.
So that's automatically 7. You bring a tight end in, you're bringing an 8th guy into the box. You bring a fullback in the game, you're bringing a 9th guy into the box. So by playing a fullback and a tight end, which the Jaguars did on many, many snaps, and actually they had Tommy Bohannon in more offensive snaps than every other team besides 2. Only James Devlin from the Patriots and Kyle Juszczyk.
You nailed it.
The fullback from the 49ers played more snaps with the offense than Tommy Bohannon did. So they've put a emphasis on the fact that they want a fullback lead blocking. So just on numbers alone, not cheating the run, not saying they're probably going to run the ball here, let's put an extra guy in the box, just covering the guys that the Jaguars have put in the box, you have 9 with a fullback and a tight end.
So do you think with Safarian Jenkins being more of a pass-catching tight end, not lining up on the line a lot, maybe out in the slot, getting off the line of scrimmage. Will that be advantageous for Fournette not having that extra defensive player on that what would normally have been a blocking tight end? Does that make sense?
I think that's the $1 million question, because it's going to come down to defenses respecting Blake throwing it to Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Remember, the Jets didn't have Seferian-Jenkins in on most of their run plays. So the Jets schemed around him. So it might be interesting to see if the Jaguars do that and bring in another tight end on running plays. But you'll definitely see early, you'll probably see the linebacker, what's called midpoint, which is pretty obvious, but he plays the middle point between the tackle and the tight end. And then he can kind of stay there to kind of help against the run until Blake and the offense can show they can hit those quick outs, which will then move that linebacker out to what's called head up on the tight end or inside shoulder, which will then be advantageous to Leonard Fournette. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Don't you think Norwell's going to help that as well? I mean, some of that tight end and fullback back there to help block might be because the offensive line, they were kind of questionable last year.
I think it'll help a lot, and in more ways. I think,
better.
Yeah, for what we're paying them. and in the power, one thing I didn't mention in the power offense, you run. I mean, the play power, like the play call power in the power running scheme is a play where the guard pulls. So the basic staple play for your power run scheme is a pulling guard. And we saw that a lot with A.J. Cann. We saw that a lot with, Omame. Actually was a decent puller.
Tell us what a pulling guard does.
A pulling guard is basically, if you're a left guard at the snap, you take 2 steps backwards and then run to the right side, to the outside of the tackle or the tight end, and just become a fourth blocker on the opposite side.
Yeah.
So the point is to try to get the running back to the edge before the linebacker that's keying you gets there.
I knew that. I just could tell Joe
Right,
did.
you're right, absolutely.
He looked lost.
Right.
Completely glazed eyes at that point.
That's one thing you evaluate. We'll get more to that when we talk about offensive line. That's one thing you evaluate guards on, is when you say they have good feet, they're referring to their ability to take that back drop step and then get to the edge. I mean, you'll see some guards like trip over themselves and fall all the time, and that's someone that doesn't have good feet.
Right.
I mean, I know we're trying to go from like top of the running backs to bottom, but Corey Grant is kind of like an edge rusher, correct? Speed-wise? I mean, isn't that his kind of game? He's not a power.
You mean taking the ball to the outside?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, getting to the edge. Yeah, he's definitely a speed back. We really haven't seen him in a role where he's gotten snaps out of like a standard formation. Usually it's like a screen or a sweep or a fake punt. It's not standard. So he may be able to, but typically smaller backs don't do well in that sort of.
Okay, I just want to
It's
clarify,
interesting
like,
that you
his
brought
skill
him
set.
up because people are clamoring to see more of him. Last year, in the regular season, he had 30 rushing attempts. That's less than 2 per game. With Yeldon being a healthy scratch for several games at the beginning of the year, and then Chris Ivory being a healthy scratch towards the end of the year. Corey Grant continued to be third on the depth chart, which everyone and their brother was saying in the second half of the New England game, where's Corey Grant, because of the first half that he had. I think a lot of that to do was Bill Belichick being a great adjuster at halftime, and he was going to not allow that to happen anymore. I don't think we're giving Belichick enough credit when it comes to that argument and wondering where Corey Grant was in the second half. But to me, that we saw a lot of Grant because of special teams. He had big plays on special teams, but wow, 30 carries in the entire regular season. I just feel like there needs to be more of that.
Well, and that's kind of talked about Joey, where he's saying line him up in that as a running back. But we saw a lot of him in the Patriots game, but he had 60 yards on 3 catches against the Patriots.
Right.
So we did see him, but it's those screens, it's those quick flares.
He was their Deion Lewis. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He had 3 receptions for 41 yards in the regular season, and then he had 3 receptions for 59 and 1/2 against the Patriots.
I mean, the reason I brought it up was because of the pulling guard comment. I mean, like, line him up like that, pulling guard, get him to the outside. I mean, he just, I don't know what his 40 is at all, but he looks like one of the fastest players on the field every time he touches the ball. I mean, he looks like he just flies.
Sometimes a faster back isn't what you want with a pulling guard because they'll get there before the lineman does.
So the play has to develop before that happens.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like Grant's one of those players that I would like to see a little bit more of him too, but since he's so quick and everything, he's one of those flash players. He gets out there, he's probably not covered, and then he gets the ball and he bolts. When you're only getting 30 snaps for the whole season, you have that opportunity to kind of do that. Obviously, you would like to see more production too, but I wouldn't be putting him in unless he just steps up and does amazing over a TJ Yeldon. TJ, he goes out there and he produces. I mean, when he was out there last year. I mean, Grant, I mean, again, I think he's just a quick guy that you can scheme something tricky, and when you give it to him, he's just going to fly. I don't see him doing much more than that.
I mean, maybe I'm just bitter towards Yeldon when he was our featured back, because, I mean, I just see him as like that vanilla. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's not going to blow anything up. He's going to be okay catching the ball. I know he's a pretty good blocker. I'm sure Jason can give us some more color on that, but I just don't see him as like your go-to number 2. I mean, I think somebody could step in and do a way better job than that, it seems like to me.
No, I agree. I'm with you. If I was making the depth chart, I would put Grant at 2. The only reason that would give me pause on that is because Yeldon's a better blocker, and that's usually where they use him on third down for passing situations. But when you consider, too, Corey Grant had 30 carries in the regular season. He had 248 yards. That's over 8 yards per carry. He's just seemed like one of those guys that every time he was in the game and he touched the ball, he did something with it. You never really saw him take the ball and run right into the center and gain a yard and a half or 2 yards. I mean, he always seemed to be making a play that was substantial. I like Yeldon. I actually think as a whole, this group is probably our deepest from top to bottom. When I say top to bottom, I mean our first 3, because we'll have a 4th running back, but that's going to be mainly to protect us from injury. If it's Cook or whomever we get in that 4th spot, I would be shocked if we actually see them in the game when it matters. It might maybe in garbage time. But anyway, so our top 3, I think that's a pretty... We've been talking about depth on every position group so far as a concern. I don't see that with this group. Obviously, there is a huge gap, in my opinion, between Fournette and the other 2, but it's not so much where if Fournette went down, we'd be going, the season's lost, what are we going to do? Or we have no running back. They were undefeated in the 3 games that he missed last year, but I think it's ridiculous to assume that he's not valuable because we were undefeated. That's just moronic.
It does seem like somebody like a Tim Cook with his size could step in if Fournette had a couple game injury, not like a season-ending injury. Like, we'd be okay with that depth. So that's kind of encouraging
as a third running back. Not
exactly.
to play.
No, exactly. As that big guy when you need him, fill in the spot.
I'm going to disagree with y'all. I think Yeldon is a good 2, and I think especially the way that we use him. Fournette ended up playing a little over 50% of the offensive snaps. Chris Ivory had about 23%. Yeldon, Grant, they kind of filled out the rest of those offensive snaps. Or we were in empty, which means no running back, obviously. But I think Yeldon is a really good third down back. I think you're going to see Fournette's usage go up. Le'Veon Bell had an 83% usage. He was in on 83% offensive snaps. Fournette was on about 53%. So I understand they're not the same type of running back, but I think the Jaguars want to have Fournette on every first and second down. And then third down if it's short yardage. But if it's not short yardage, what are you going to want out of your third down back? You want someone that can block in the pass game. You want someone that can catch in the pass game. And I would argue that Yeldon is our best receiving running back that we have. I mean, remember, the guy only played in 10 games last year, and he had 30 receptions for 224 yards with almost 8 yards per catch. So he's shown he's really valuable in the pass game. The game that Fournette was suspended, week 7, he came in and had 9 carries for 122 yards. He had a good game in the playoff against the Steelers. He had a 40-yard reception. Marone even spoke about Yeldon earlier this week and said he likes Yeldon because he gives you the best of both worlds with speed and size.
So, I mean, to play devil's advocate here, Fournette is your franchise guy. He's a horse. He's a specimen. He catches the ball well. Why is he not a 3-down back?
He's not 3-down back because he's more of a grinder type running back. You know what I mean? Ideally, we would want him to be a 3-down back. But if you had a better pass blocker and a better receiver, wouldn't you want them in the game on third down?
He's that much worse of a receiver and a blocker.
At this point in his career, it's hard to know. But I would say based off his rookie year, Yeldon was significantly better in that aspect of the game.
I thought Fournette was really impressive catching the ball last year, especially when the knock on him going into the draft was that he couldn't catch, which he later said was that's just because LSU never threw him the ball. But I thought he did really well. I actually think it's hard to say which of the 3 are the best or worst pass-catching running backs. I think they all do it pretty well. And I will say different. They are. And that's a good thing. Yeah. You know, that all 3 of them are very different. It makes the opposing defense really have to think when each one comes in the game, what are they going to get? I will say the way Yeldon played when he was put in the game really made you wonder why in the world he was ever a healthy scratch to begin the year. Because I would argue that last year was by far his best year. He looked like a different running back last year than the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, his previous 2 seasons, I never liked him. He didn't seem to have vision to me was the biggest problem. I mean, he would
he fumbled. That was
and he looked like extremely slow at all times.
Yeah, I mean,
he's big. He's 6'2", 223. He's not a small guy.
He's kind of a sneaky big guy.
Yeah,
because you don't look at him and think that guy's big.
No, I never thought he was that big, but obviously he's huge. But that being said, I'm actually not too upset with Fournette not being a 3-down back, for the sense if we have running backs that we can plug in on 3rd down, why do we want to beat the crap out of our running back? I mean, we saw that with Jones-Drew. I mean, he ran everything and he just got beat up. Most of your running backs that are 3 downs through the whole season end up battling injuries and stuff. So if you don't have to have him running all 3 downs and you can have another running back filter in and do solid, I mean, and him still get over 1,000 yards, why?
I think the Jags would like to see Fournette at that same usage rate that Le'Veon Bell's at. So, Joey, I think they do want to see him on every snap. I think they do.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they would love to, but I just don't think they have faith in him right now. He was a rookie, though.
That makes sense. I mean, he didn't have the practice, catching the ball out of the backfield at LSU, and I really had no expectations of him doing that. Maybe that's why I'm impressed with his catching ability in the pros, because we never saw that before. And I don't want to see him at 90% or 80%, but I mean, 50% seems really low when he is your franchise running back and an absolute stud first round draft pick. So maybe 67%. I don't know what Le'Veon Bell's percentage is.
He's at 83.
See that? I think that's probably a bit high in my mind. That is wearing somebody out.
Just to give you a little different context, Alvin Kamara was at 45 and Mark Ingram was at 55. So that's a team that splits it right down the middle with 2 feature backs. Steelers are an example of someone who has 1 workhorse back, and we're somewhere in the middle there.
I kind of agree with Robert's take in terms of, if we have a guy that can come in on 3rd down that the team believes in, why not rest Fournette a little bit? When we spoke about Fournette, where he ranked on the NFL's top 100, Jason, you brought up the point when he made that 90-yard run against Pittsburgh. That was in the 4th quarter. And I think because we have guys like Yeldon and guys like Grant, that gives him the opportunity when the defense is worn down to come in a little bit more fresh, maybe not a ton, but a little bit more fresh, and make those runs, and it helps a lot. So maybe the coaches do want him eventually to be a 3rd down back, but I think right now it doesn't necessarily hurt the team a lot that Yeldon or Grant or whomever comes in on those 3rd down and let him take a quick breather, convert, and then get him back in there ready to go.
Maybe it's just my personal opinion on not being sold on Yeldon as being able to continue that kind of production based on what he did when he was supposed to be the guy. But maybe this is the role for him, and it is a completely different team around him.
I would have agreed with you until last year.
Sure.
Because I thought Yeldon just played so much better than he did the first 2 years.
And if he continues that, then I'm sold.
Right. And then that's where I'm coming from. If he can continue to do what he did, I'm fine with him being in on 3rd down and letting Fournette take a break, because like Robert's saying, he's not a Le'Veon Bell where he waits for the hole to open. He makes holes, you know what I'm saying, when he runs. So give him that little breather, give him that little rest, and let him be durable for an entire season. It might not make a big deal on one drive, you think, keep him in there, but over the course of an entire season, when he is creating contact, when he is inviting contact, one of the coolest plays in Jaguar history, I'll go ahead and say, when he waved that guy to come hit him or try and hit him. That's the running back that he is. That's the style that he plays. So, yeah, let him sit for a little bit and bring in Yeldon, bring in Grant, change the pace, and let's have him all season long.
It's so weird with the way that the coaching staff has these healthy scratches. I mean, obviously we don't have the information that they have, but I mean, with Yeldon, he not playing the first 7 weeks. I mean, I think the coaching staff really hates people that fumble. That's my conclusion. And Yeldon had fumble issues.
I do too.
Well, we all do.
Yeah.
But I think Ivory fumbled twice, and he had a huge fumble against the Cardinals, which probably cost us the game. As soon as he started fumbling, they took him and started scratching him. He played one. If you remember, he played 1 snap against the Bills. He had 1 carry for 2 yards, and that was it. That was it. So, what is going through the minds of these coaches that you have this running back that didn't play week 16 or 17, and then you're going to bring him in the playoffs, give him one carry, and then take him out. It's
And did he play against Pittsburgh at all?
No, he didn't play against Pittsburgh or New England.
And we should have known that beforehand, though. He had that problem before he came to the Jaguars, fumbling. I mean,
But he also led the league in rushing one year, didn't he?
yeah, he did. I know that he's not on the Jaguars now, but one of my biggest issues with him is that we brought him in thinking he was going to be this red zone running back. I had him on my fantasy team when he had that big year, so I watched him a lot. He only had 2 or 3 red zone touchdowns that year. Everything that he made that year when he I think he was close to leading the league in touchdowns too. I mean, we're fast break. They were 20 yards or more. I never thought he was going to be that guy that was going to come in the red zone and pound it in because he was never that before.
Well, that's true. But he also had that mysterious stomach issue,
Like a hernia or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they never really came out and said what it was, right? I mean, it was he was out for a long time.
Tapeworm.
Yeah, it was you've got some weird Brock Lesnar type something going on where nobody's gonna tell you what it is, but it's very serious. I mean, I think that he was not the same guy ever again.
He definitely wasn't the same guy ever again.
No.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Jason, do you know something we don't know?
We can't talk about it on the air.
No. Okay. I'll shift gears then. Kind of go back to what Robert was saying. He was talking about fantasy. Let me ask you guys this. In your fantasy draft, where do you take Leonard Fournette in the top 5? Top 5 pick? Is he a top 5 fantasy pick?
I'm still a quarterback first.
No.
Let me ask. Okay, let me rephrase it. If you're a quarterback first guy, would you? Well, I don't know where do you see him fantasy value wise?
I took Maurice Jones-Drew first overall 6 straight years. So you know what I'm going to say.
How'd that do for you?
I think I won one of them.
Yeah.
Actually, he was actually good. I mean, it was a pretty good strategy, only until his later years where it didn't really backfire. But when he was in his prime, he was leading the league in rushing every year. But yeah, no, I would take Leonard Fournette with my first pick.
You would?
Absolutely.
If you had the first overall pick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Really? If I'm the bottom of the draft and I'm going to get the Serpentine back up, I'll probably take him, but I'm not taking him in the top 5.
Really?
No.
You just said 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns.
Yeah, but that's not a guarantee. I mean, he hasn't done it yet.
A man of conviction.
I'm not locking that in. We're talking about fantasy here, man. That's my $20.
Yeah. I would take him in the top 5. I absolutely would. I mean, I'm not saying that I will, but
If I wasn't taking quarterback in the top 5, I'd take him, probably.
Hey, after me taking the Jags defense last year, I might take them in the top 5.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
That was a steal.
Fournette, remember at the beginning of the year, he was the fantasy steal. He was scoring a touchdown every game. And everyone's man, this is the guy to have. Kind of fell off a little bit, but yeah, I mean, he's only going to get better. He's not going to get worse. As long as he stays away from those jump spins he does, I think.
He loves a good jump spin.
Those scare me
His
every
ankles
time,
don't,
though.
His ankles
No.
don't. That's the problem.
Yeah, if I was the coaches, I would coach him out of doing that.
Yes.
They never really work either.
Yeah, I think once it worked, but no, you're right. It never really.
He would break one every 3 or 4
Yeah.
games, but that's not near enough.
and
to,
you hold your
destroy-
breath every time.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for one to work.
My dad
Please, just work.
really hated it when he would do those spin moves. I don't know what it was, but that was the only thing he could talk about the whole game. Why does he keep doing that?
That's straight street ball, man. You can't crush that spirit.
I just hope I wish they would mic him up when you do that because I imagine every time he does them, he's going hee-hoo. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because that would be awesome. My favorite run of his was who was it? Cincinnati? I don't forget who they were playing when he waved the guy on to come try and hit him.
Pittsburgh.
It was Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
it was Pittsburgh. Yeah, the first Pittsburgh game.
Yeah.
The first time we beat Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, defensive backs are terrified to tackle that guy.
Who wouldn't be?
I mean, they got to be. I mean, it's scary, and he's doing that. You'd be shaking in your shoes.
And he gets lower than you, too. So it's every time.
Honestly, imagine him running at you over 20 miles an hour, and it's you and him.
Oh, I don't care if you have pads on.
I got
or
a
not.
leg cramp.
Yeah, you're done. you're feeling that for days.
Oh, man,
And
that's
it's
scary.
awesome.
Yeah, that's the best.
That's funny. How long have we gone, Robert, on this podcast?
40.
40 minutes, and we still haven't even talked about the second leading rusher on the Jaguars.
You're talking about our boy?
Blake
Double B?
Bortles,
Blake
the
Bortles,
man.
332 yards rushing. He averages 23 yards per game in his career.
Is that regular season?
That's regular season.
Because
yeah.
that's because
he went off against the Bills.
Yeah, he went off against the Bills.
Yeah, he had 10 yards for 88 against the Bills. 35
all in the second half, right? Was that?
pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty much.
basically. And then
That was their offense.
yeah, he had 35 yards rushing against the Steelers and then -2 against the Patriots.
Really? -2? That must have just been a sack, and he didn't try to
Yeah.
run.
And
That's because they were ghosting him that whole game.
They knew. They knew.
Yeah.
They knew how.
Belichick.
Yeah.
I know.
And you talk about somebody who isn't afraid of contact. I mean, Bortles is not a small quarterback, and I mean, you don't want your, I don't want to say franchise quarterback, but hopefully franchise quarterback running into people or taking hits like that. But he can. I mean, he's like a Roethlisberger almost when it comes to like his durability. It seems like I don't want to jinx him, but I think he puts a hurting on some people too. I mean,
he's a big dude.
I think he likes it, and he plays better after that happens. Like if he gets a run like that, where he gets some contact, picks up a big play, and that adrenaline starts flowing, he throws better after that.
Yeah, when he gets hit, he just gets like hyped. I love it.
He does, man. That's a gamer. I mean, that's what you like to see in your
He's
leader.
sneaky fast too.
He is.
Like he'll take off on you, and you're like, oh man. I saw him beat when the Bills game. I rewatched it today. He was just beating linebackers to the sideline, left and right. It's like, come on, Blake. Where was this all year? But
First of all, I like the fact that you've rewatched the Bills game today.
well, I wanted to look at that was the lowest yards per attempt our rushing game had all season. So I wanted to try to see like what happened, and they just shut down our offense. I would try to look at a correlation between running to the right, the middle, or the left, and it was just like crap everywhere. And they just kept running Fournette like a head into the wall, and nothing was working. And then Blake just took off in the second half. And but they averaged less than 3 yards per carry that game.
Do you think that's because Blake threw the ball so bad that game? I mean, that was kind of like a regression for him as far as
there was some drops though. It wasn't all on Blake. There was some bad drops. Keelan Cole had a bad fumble in that game. There was all kind of things that happened.
Hey, they won the game. They won a playoff game.
No, they did.
You know,
they did what it took.
And I think, to Blake's credit, he wasn't on. It's like a pitcher sometimes just can't find the strike zone.
I mean,
and he took off, and honestly,
he
like
took over.
that won them the game.
Yeah.
I mean, it kept them holding on to the ball. It kept the Bills' offense off the field. Kept our defense rested, and we won.
It also seems from a scheme standpoint that our coaching staff, again, I keep giving them credit because credit's due. They knew what it was going to take to beat the Steelers for a second time in Pittsburgh, and they really schemed down that Buffalo game.
I believe that.
I think they
100%.
held a lot back.
Mm-hmm. I think they were going to wait and make the Bills' offense beat our defense before they showed anything on offense. And obviously they probably didn't want it to be as close as it was.
Sure.
10-3, but I was at that game. It never felt. I was never nervous.
Right.
Like, oh my goodness, the Bills are coming.
I was annoyed by the Bills fans.
Yes, very much so.
I just like the fact they set the parking lot on fire at the A1AL house on San Jose. I mean, it's like the least gangster neighborhood on the planet. I mean, it's like Ponte Vedra. There's a parking lot fire due to hooligans.
They're just the weirdest fans. I still don't get the breaking table thing. I mean,
those YouTube videos are fantastic.
They are, but it's just like I don't get it.
They're complete idiots. But yeah, I agree.
It wouldn't be fair to talk about the running backs without bringing up Joey's favorite running back. Not technically a running back, but he's a back. Tommy Bowe.
Hey, Tommy Bowe, man.
5 attempts, 5 yards. However, 2 touchdowns. So he's averaging a touchdown every 2 snaps.
I think one of
1.75 snaps.
That is a high percentage. I think one of Jason's favorite things to say on the podcast is the numbers don't tell the full story of how
I've said that my whole life.
Contributes. And I don't think there's more of a case than with Bohannon. I mean, it just kills me. It kills me that Gus Bradley did not use a fullback. Instead, used Tyson Alualu.
Oh.
Then you bring in a guy like Bohannon, and look what he's done for the team. I mean, he was huge. He was a major part of the offense, not necessarily obviously carrying the ball, but being that lead blocker.
That's also an Olsen thing too.
Greg Olsen.
Well, for sure, and that's another thing about the coaching staff that I like is the fact that they really look at things from how can we get better? What's different? Who are we playing against? I mean, fullbacks aren't used a lot in the league these days, so why wouldn't you use a fullback at this point to mess up the other team? I mean, it's genius. And Tommy Bowe, he's not flashy, but dude, he plays that spot well. He does exactly what he's asked. He's even does stuff he's not asked. I mean, catching 2 touchdowns. I think he played 8 years, and he had 1 touchdown in 8 years and 2 this year.
Yep.
I mean, the dude obviously is flourishing in the environment that he's in, which is, I think, it says a lot about the coaching staff. And I think a lot of players are playing better than they would elsewhere because of that.
Right.
Not to mention he won Pop Warner Humanitarian Award of 2017.
I don't even know what that is, but that sounds great.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that Joey's going to be ordering a Chinese knockoff Bohannon jersey as well.
I'll get one that says, if I can get it says Tommy Bowe on it and not Tommy Bohannon, absolutely.
All right, so let me throw something at y'all. It's 4th and 1. Fullback dive.
I'm nervous already.
Fullback dive is called to the huddle. Who do you want as your fullback? Tommy Bohannon, Greg Jones, or Montel Owens?
Greg Jones.
Greg Jones. I
Trust
have
me,
to FSU.
I love Montel. Earned his way on. You talk about backstory, never made a squad in his life, but walked on every team and did fantastic. But
went to Maine.
Yeah, exactly. They even have a football team.
The Maine Bears.
It's kind of God. Yeah. Greg Jones was an absolute freak.
Yeah.
I guess at this point in time, because we've only seen the one season with Tommy Bowe, but it'd be him. But I don't know. If he has another season like he did last year, I'm going with Tommy.
All right.
I don't know, man.
I like
Greg
Bo,
Jones.
man. Bo's clutch.
Yeah.
Bo is clutch. I don't know about Greg Jones' numbers, but it seems like every time Bo gets the ball, he scores. Bo knows best.
That's true. I like Bo a lot, but you're talking about Greg Jones.
You're talking about
man.
royalty.
You are. That's
Does he go to the Pride?
yikes. Yeah. That's a great question.
For the most jack guy ever. Possibly.
We're still the most jack guy ever. That guy's, him and Paz need to like just work out together from now on out.
Oh,
and just
man.
like keep being real.
You know, that's what. Speaking of Maurice Jones-Drew, I respect Jones-Drew. He retired, and he retired.
He did.
He retired from the weight room.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, you enjoy yourself. You paid your dues. You have millions of dollars. Why are you going to the weight room now?
That's like Baselli, man. Talking about retiring. Like, he's like, I got money, I'm going to eat, and then I'm going to pick up a sponsor that helps me lose weight because I've gotten way too big.
It's really genius, actually.
It is genius.
Greg Jones' career numbers: 272 rushing attempts, 913 yards, 471 receiving yards, and 13 total touchdowns.
Dude,
How
for
many
a-
years?
For a
He was
fullback,
drafted in 04, retired in 2000, basically retired in 2013 because he didn't play for
I'd be interested
9
to
years?
see who his quarterback was for a lot of those years because I would imagine
That would have been
David Garrard,
That'd be Garrard.
Blaine Gabbert.
Left wedge.
So I take back what I said and I go.
it was
I
not
go with
the
him.
heyday of the offense. You know, I mean, Garrard, they had some good
Two?
times there, but seriously, I mean,
Dude, those are stud numbers for a fullback.
yeah.
That's true. They are. He's more of a running back, I guess, in my mind.
Yeah, he was like a running back that they made. Once he got hurt, I mean, when he was healthy at FSU before both of his knee injuries, that guy was Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, he was a beast.
Maybe even more so.
Really?
I mean, you've seen the video of him doing that forearm to the guy from UNC?
No.
You got to look that up. It is unbelievable. We'll try and put it on our Twitter if we can find it.
We will tonight.
Yes, it'll be on our Twitter. You can look for it. He throws this stiff arm to this. It's the best stiff arm I've ever seen in football, college or NFL. You'll love it. It's amazing.
Nice.
The guy flies 6 feet. I don't know how he does it. He just lays an index finger on
Does-
the guy
does he
goes
get
flying
up?
backwards. I don't know. He just run. He keeps running. But that was before he had two major knee issues.
Yeah,
Like,
he had
major.
ACLs,
And
injuries.
That's basically what moved him to fullback. Otherwise, he would have been a running back. Man, when he was before those happened, oh my gosh, he was on another level. On another level.
I remember Florida State fans were just hyping this guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did watch a little bit of FSU, not like I do now, but I remember thinking like, is this guy that good? Like they were like, this guy's like the best thing since work done. Like they're like, but he was pretty good. I mean, he was one of my favorite Jaguars.
It didn't last long because of his injuries, but
Yeah.
I think he had one healthy year, and that was maybe his freshman year. Yeah, he college fans, when they're really into their teams, they'll hype everyone's the next greatest guy. Anyone that's 5-star, 4-star. He actually lived up to it, and then he got hurt. But yeah, so it was
6th all time rushing yards at FSU
That's incredible.
That's pretty impressive.
for a guy that big.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most interesting thing this season to watch for is going to be how they diversify those 26% of offensive snaps that Chris Ivory played last year. Like I know we're kind of assuming they're going to get spread evenly to Fournette and Yeldon and Grant, but how they split that up is going to be interesting to me. I'm kind of leaning toward Yeldon's going to get most of those snaps, but if Fournette picks up 10% of that, and then Yeldon picks up 10% of that, and then Grant picks up 6%, I don't know, because Chris Ivory was a pretty good player. I thought Chris Ivory brought a lot to our team. It was like that 1-2 punch, especially early in the season. You could really see it being effective.
Really? I don't remember him doing anything last year.
It was just he played better than people think. When you would get hit by Fournette, and then they would take him out and bring in Chris Ivory, and then he's hitting you. I mean, he's a big back too. I mean, I'm looking at Chris Ivory's stats here.
While you look that up, I guarantee you it wasn't like $8 million better than we think. I mean, I think that's the big problem is
Yeah.
the expectations, the price tag. I mean, if it was half that, he might still be on the team or running. Having a
You
chance
know what
at
I
it.
remember about him? Every time he ran it for 10+ yards, he got hurt. Like he'd come out limping or have a hamstring or something. And it wasn't like a severe injury. Like, man, every time he did something well, he'd go off and he'd be hurt.
This would probably not go along with what you're saying. I never felt we utilized him very well. I never thought he would. From watching him previously, I never felt like he was going to be I'm going to split evenly the snaps with Yeldon like we had him going. I felt like he was more of the guy that he needed to be that guy that got all like 3 snaps. I mean, because he needed to have a chance to break out, because that was his whole role before he got to the Jaguars, was he would have those breakout yards. It was never like I averaged 3 yards every time I touched the ball, but he would get like a 20-yard run every now and then. So,
and they probably would have loved to have done that, but we talk about the flow of the game and like game scheme against other teams. He was always hurt. You can't bank on that. You can't like rely on that.
Right.
So I think he got this side gig because they had to go against that because of the injuries. And then when he was back, it was already like, dude, you're replaced kind of at this point.
He had 382 yards on 112 carries, 3.4 yards per carry. It's about where Fournette was in yards per carry. But then he gave us a lot in the receiving game. 21 receptions, 175 yards. I mean, I thought he brought a lot to the table just from his size. I hope Yeldon can step up and be that guy, and I think Yeldon will step up and be that guy. But I'm just most interested to see how they distribute those carries.
Well, you mentioned Bortles earlier and his ability to do that. I mean, I know they said they worked it into with like play action where he had the option to run if he chose to, but what about actual design runs for him? Do you think we see more of that this year? Because I know people were calling for that last year.
I don't think we do. I mean, as much as we've seen it over the last few seasons, that we know he can move. I mean, I feel like if they were going to do that, they would have done that last year. I feel like they save it for when we're having those moments like the Buffalo games where he just needs to get out there and play Bortles ball kind of deal. That's when they're going to let him just kind of take off. But for the most part, I don't think they're really going to – we might see it every other game or so, but I don't think they're really scheming for him to run, because I don't think – as durable as we see him as, I don't think they want him to possibly get hurt.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, you got to remember – and the only reason why I remember this is because I heard them talk about it today – is between the San Francisco game, Week 16, the Titans game, Week 17, and the first half of the Bills game – our offense did not look that good. I mean, that's 10 quarters of football that our offense was stagnant. And it took Blake running for 80 yards to kind of get us out of that. I mean, I don't know. I know that was toward the end of the season and we weren't technically playing for anything. That has a lot to do with it.
That's what I was going to say. 2 of those 3 games didn't mean anything at all.
I was still really worried about that going into the playoffs.
I was too.
I remember that, and I was like, hey, we're not that good of an offense to be able to take a couple games off and then pick it back up.
I trusted in Marone fully. Marone we trust.
As good as our season went, like I fully believed even to that point that we could still blow it just because of how the Jaguars ball's been for years. So I mean, like, I'm with you. I never felt comfortable on kind of how. So even some of the scheming went on offense towards the end of the year. We felt like we got really conservative on the second halves and stuff, and I felt like we really needed to be way more aggressive than we were.
Going back to what Jason was saying earlier about Chris Ivory, I'll say this: I'm not going to miss him at all on the team this year. I just never. I don't think of as highly of him in terms of what he contributed, I guess, as Jason. I think Yeldon will definitely step up. But I think what did you say again? The PFF on what is the percentage of Fournette versus Le'Veon Bell? What was it like around?
The Fournette played in 53% of offensive snaps, and Le'Veon Bell played in 83% of offensive snaps.
I think we could see Fournette go up to close, sniff at 60%, which I think would be a very nice number for him. So see increased snaps for him, but also see Yeldon get more play. I'll say it again. I really like our running backs this year, but I like our offense as a whole a lot better this year. And so who knows where the games are going to be in the fourth quarter. Ideally, we have Fournette resting on the bench in the fourth quarter because we don't need him, because we're just blowing teams out. Because something else we haven't talked about is our defense is going to be better as well. Who knows? But I think the last thing I'm thinking about going into this year is how are we going to replace Ivory? That's just not even on my radar whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main positive going into next season with our running back core is that Fournette is a second-year player. I mean, yeah, he came in as a stud, and he came in with a cocky attitude, talking about how the speed of the game was nothing like he expted it.
Would you say there may have been a chip on his shoulder?
I don't know about chip on his shoulder because he was highly recruited. So I wouldn't consider that a chip category.
Okay, all right.
But point is that he was probably saying a lot of that to just portray that. He's going to be way more comfortable with the speed of the game. He's going to be way more comfortable with the defenses, way more comfortable with our offense and our coaches, and just the whole life of a NFL player. I mean, that can't do anything but help him be better.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like percentage of him running next year solely relies on if TJ Yeldon can play anywhere close to like he did last year. I mean, if he does not come out and play like he did last year and give more, because he is going to be having to take on, whether you liked him or not, what Ivory did last year. That's going to be fully reliant on what Leonard Fournette, how many snaps he gets percentage-wise. I mean, because he could easily, if they're not stepping up, go up to 80. I mean, I don't see that being far-fetched. I don't want him to, but if, in my opinion, if we have like the first 2 years we had of Yeldon, next year he's gonna be getting 75 to 80% of the snaps. But
which again, I'm good with that because we've got a 2-3 year window for the Super Bowl.
Disagree.
Ride Fournette to the finish line, man.
Just strongly disagree.
And we can have that conversation on another podcast. But you know what? If you have to wear him out for that, I mean, whatever.
All right, that's going to wrap up our portion on the Jaguars running backs. Make sure, if you have not yet, to follow us on Twitter at Another Jags Pod and on Instagram and Facebook at Another Jags Podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to wrap up the show.
All right, welcome back to Another Jags Podcast, the number one off-season Jaguars podcast in all of the land. We're wrapping up tonight's show. We've talked about running backs ad nauseum, and I want to throw this out there that has nothing to do with that subject matter at all. And I'm gonna throw this to Joey specifically because, as we all know, if you're a sports fan, the World Cup is starting soon. And Joey, America, I didn't see them on the list of teams playing. How do you feel about that? Are you going to watch? Are you going to cry? What's going on? Because you are the soccer fan. You played soccer in high school and college. You're a good, very good soccer player. So how do you feel?
Honestly, man, it's I've been like trying to pretend like it didn't happen. Yeah. Because it's only every 4 years, so right. It's like a major time frame in between. We've got a lot of young players who should be getting showcased right now. Also, it's like Father's Day kind of kicks it off. So I used to go with my dad to the games like when I was here, and we always used to watch it, whether it was like 5 o'clock in the morning at RP McMurphy's or whatever. So there's a lot that goes with that. I just recommend going on YouTube and looking up the video that talks about Klinsmann and the coaches, because I don't want to say bad things about people, but there's a lot to that. Our young squad is beating the crap out of people right now.
You say bad things about me all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, these are like...
on and off. You should hear him when you're not around.
You're a good guy that just disagrees with me. He's like an absolute, like, just bad guy. But with that being said, of course I'll watch because it's super exciting. I mean, you've got phenomenal athletes. I mean, you can't... so
who are you going to root for since the
I'm
US
rooting for
isn't?
Germany, man.
Really?
Because before our team was any good, America, I mean, I was always a German fan just because their style of play. You know, they're hard-nosed defense. They play through the air team. I mean, I just like their style of soccer. England as well, they're just not as good. So I'm only rooting for a team that's good if I got to pick one besides us. But absolutely, man, Germany all the way.
Okay.
Do you think the United States made a colossal error by missing out on one of Christian Pulisic?
Pulisic is the exact kid that I was talking about. It's a shame.
Do you think we messed up? Because, I mean, you only get like, what, 2 or 3 World Cups?
Yeah.
So, he's missing one.
No, that's the kid I was talking about. That guy is probably our Messi or Ronaldo. I mean, he's not as good.
He's going to be watching from home.
He is that kid, and he is missing out. I mean, it's like 7-year gap because he was probably ready 2-3 years ago, and now he's got 4 years before the next one. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt between now and then, because that kid's he's legit. And
he's the real deal.
He is.
We'll see how well he meshes with Freddie Adu and Landon Donovan, though. I'm not sure if he will.
I'd like to see Jalen Ramsey out on the pitch.
I think Alexi Lawless is taking him under his wing, actually, and Cubby Jones is teaching him how to score, so he'll be all right, man. But yeah, James, I mean, it is. It's as that being like your sport, you can't watch MLS here. I mean, because for the most part, it's crap as far as soccer goes.
What? You talking about my LAFC like that?
I mean, they're like
LA
maybe the best,
club?
Or the Seattle team. They have some good soccer, but I mean, you can catch as many games as you can overseas, but that's hard to like watch on a consistent basis. So like the World Cup, plus I mean, it's America, man. Everybody gets behind it. It's like the one time a year where everybody is a soccer fan, and it's cool to like go watch it and enjoy it. And
one time every 4 years.
4 years, exactly. And it's just not going to be the same this year. So it's disappointing.
I'm by no means a soccer fan. I obviously hop on the bandwagon every World Cup like everyone else. But what I'm going to miss besides just being a fan and watching the U.S. compete, because they always seem to exceed expectations, it seems like, is what I'm going to miss most is not being able to hear all the people that suddenly think they're soccer experts, that's going to be disappointing. They really have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
I'm pretty sure if you have one of those like USA soccer scarves, that makes you like an expert every 4 years.
I actually have a Gryffindor side and a U.S. soccer scarf, which one on side and one on the other, like a reversible tie.
Interesting.
It's pretty awesome.
Do you think the U.S. not making it into the World Cup this year is going to affect the stadium sales for the next national game, whoever plays here in Jacksonville? Because there's not going to be that hype coming off of it like there has in the past?
I don't think so at all. I mean, I think those are so regionalized.
As long as they don't do it on a Wednesday night again.
Yeah, I mean, I think people those are so few and far between as far as the regional area that you're in, unless you're like up in Foxborough for some reason because there are tons up there, or Kansas City. But all the other areas, I mean, you don't get many of those. You know? So, I mean, I think when those come into town, if you're even a remote soccer fan, it's a big deal.
Follow-up question. If Chris Wondolowski walked in the room right now, would you punch him in the face?
Yes.
Jason's just twisting the knife, Joey. He's really making you hurt tonight.
No, I don't like that guy to begin with. So I just like put the icing.
I don't know who you're talking about. So
horrible forward.
Okay. Is he running back for the Jags? Low on the depth chart. Okay, well, I just wanted to get because that starts this week, doesn't it?
Yes, I think 3 days.
Yeah,
4
World
days,
Cup.
something
So
like
that's big time.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
Wait, on a sad note, James, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no
I can go home and cry myself to sleep now.
I want to throw that in there. If I really wanted to make it, and on a sad note for you, I'd say that Leonard Fournette and MJD will be and already have been better running backs than Freddie T for the Jags. But I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it because I don't agree.
Did just say that.
MJD definitely. Fournette yet to be seen.
Fournette.
That is a good question to end on. How about that? Where do you rank those three?
Dude, Freddie T, way better than MJD. Fournette definitely has a possibility to be the best.
You better than Freddie T?
Yes.
Wow.
Ooh. I'm going to say MJD forever. I don't think I'll ever love someone like I loved MJD.
Whoa, no, we
Not
said
even
who
my
we
own
love
kids.
the most. We said who's going to be the best running back. There's a big difference there.
That's true.
I would say right now, Freddie T1. Man, it's hard because we've only had him for a year. But I don't know. It's going to be hard to surpass Freddie T because he was just in that early stages of the Jaguars, that nostalgic. But man,
he also did it with a good receiving core too. Like he had big numbers when they had two good receivers. When MJD did it, we had nobody.
That's true.
We had nobody. I put Freddie T1 because of that, but MJD had way more yards and everything because he was the only person getting the ball for 3 or 4 years.
Well, but not even just that, he was the only bright spot on our team for so many years.
He was the only player on our offense.
I love the guy because he's the only thing you had to look forward to on the Jags for so long. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you look at somebody like Ray Lewis, like you said, and I don't know if you posted it on Twitter or not, but you texted it to us, Jason. Like he said, he's one of the best football players he's ever seen. Mm. That's coming from one of the best football players there's ever been.
Mm. Ray Lewis said that about
Freddie T.
Really?
Yes.
Mm. I didn't know that.
It's hard to. It's funny. They're so different. Like it was hard to tackle Fred Taylor because you couldn't get your arms around him.
He was elusive.
And then it was hard to tackle MJD because he would run you over. So it's two different types of backs. But
I was watching a highlight of Freddie T and the 90-yard run he had against the Dolphins, I think, and he jukes a guy. The guy's like a good 2 to 3 yards away from him, and just the guy falls down. He doesn't even come close to even making a tackle-esque move towards him. It was like all of a sudden he just had a heart attack.
Yeah, it's like
that's what it looked like.
Allen Iverson crossover, but in football. I mean, the dude's knees just buckle.
Awesome.
I mean, I don't know where this guy's going to go.
I'll tell you, if Fournette is what we think he is and will continue to be, that's 3 pretty high up there running backs for the Jaguars franchise as a whole. I mean, that's true. That's pretty awesome.
Way better than our quarterbacks overall.
Yes, but Bortles is changing that this year.
Yeah. Right, absolutely.
All right, that wraps up episode 15 and our talk about running backs and a little bit about the World Cup. Next week, we're going to be talking about the offensive line, talking about the addition of Andrew Norwell, the second year of Cam Robinson, and everything else in between. So don't forget to listen to that. That'll be coming out next week again. But we want to appreciate everyone for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Another Jags Pod and Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. Send us your questions. Send us any concerns or anything you'd like for us to talk about. We'd love to talk about those things with you all. As always, go Jags.